So, Arbed, great to see you. And thanks for sharing an amazing case study with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Gordon. Can't wait to really contribute to our amazing community.
Yeah, thank you so much. Right. So, this is Unilever Food Solutions. It's what I always ask our guests is, first of all, how did you get the gig? How did you win the business?
Well, I wanted to reveal this towards the end, but believe it or not, that was in 2018. So you can say that's 7 years ago. Going to Unilever and really telling them the helm of the content and the communication to third parties to communicate on your behalf. That was a little bit of, a challenge, right? But I was lucky to meet the director of the media, who was quite a forward-thinking person. And when I immediately told him about our view on the social world and where it was heading and that it needed to be creator-led rather than, brand-led, he immediately thought of Unilever Food Solutions being the brand where they can experiment with this. Right? Where they're like, we just repositioned the brand, to actually have them positioned as chefs talking to chefs. And so when we came to him and we were like, great, so now we want chefs to talk to chefs on your behalf, that immediately made a lot of sense. But if we had gone and went and told them, let's get maybe, another brand of theirs to do it in the same way, there'd probably be all sorts of questions of why would you want to do this? We've done all these amazing campaigns with our brand and all these amazing brands. But that made a lot of sense for specifically for Unilever Food Solutions at that time.
I love that because sometimes it's about thinking outside the box, isn't it? I mean, now these brands have all got challenges and problems, and what they don't always want to hear is what I would call the stock answer, which is, oh yes, we can go and find some people and this is what we do, blah, 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 blah. But it's actually delving into having a real meaningful conversation about what it is they're trying to do. Because I think in this instance, you were wanting to solve an interesting challenge, which was almost leveraging the B2B community, wasn't it? Of chefs that had great content, but not necessarily great amplification. So tell us a little bit in detail about how you went about doing that.
So, traditionally these brands rely on their brand voice to communicate, right? The challenge with that is that you're using a one size fits all kind of messaging that needed to comply to a huge variety of markets, to the GCC, which comprises, the Gulf countries, Egypt, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan. These are extremely distinct cultures. You can't just create one message and go to all of them, right? Immediately when you start approaching, instead of using the brand voice as a channel to communicate, you start using a Sri Lankan chef and a Pakistani chef and an Egyptian chef and a Saudi chef to talk to people. That somehow made the content far more relatable. So that was the first insight, right? We use different personas to target different markets according to that relatability, right? So the second challenge they had is to produce content at scale. And if you want to put that content on the brand channel, it had to be high production. So costs were going to be extremely high. The moment you approach it in a way and say, let other people create content on your behalf, that brought costs basically down quite a lot. So that was the second thing that we won in this approach. The third thing that we won in this approach is basically the brand, when they communicate, they're limited to, educating, informing. That's the best they can do, but they can't entertain, right? That's not their brand. That's not their voice. So using the chefs, right, as a way to also entertain was very native to the chef's voice and could basically bring to life the brand in a more fun way, right? So that was also a very interesting, basically, value we got by using these chefs. Now, combine all of this, the challenge that we had is when you go on social media and you want to identify who are the chefs that are actually popular and are potential creators we can collaborate with, the majority of them are maybe chefs that are being followed by consumers who want to learn how to cook, or, mothers who want to learn how to, cook at home.
Or celebrity chefs in some instances.
Or celebrity chefs who are super expensive, right? So that was not the answer. So what we've done is we've tapped into Unilever's existing network of chefs they know. We literally interviewed about 100 of them. And we identified those that has the best personality to get on camera and create interesting content. And we gave them playbooks to help them basically create that content on an ongoing basis to try to develop their community. Now, if you look at the stats pre-campaign, their reach was actually quite limited. So Unilever Food Solution channels, which were separated across different markets, so they had Arabia one, Sri Lanka one, Pakistan one, were barely populated, right? Because the content was somehow boring. It's the brand talking about itself. It got to be boring, right? It got to be questioned. There was no reason for people to follow it, right? Now, so that was one of the objectives, is we want to gather all this community of certified chefs on social and to bring them around those creators, right? So we brought these creators who had interesting content, and we were immediately trying to build them in a way to target that content with paid media on their own account towards those other chefs. Within 3 months, we've had the majority of that market, right? The target market. And I would say around 80% of that target market was actually following these creator accounts. That was fantastic. I already gathered them around me. Now it's time, basically, how can I bring the brand to life across different campaigns, in an authentic way, not in a forceful way, in a value-driven way, where they can come in and really contribute to that community. So we brought an interesting role for Unilever Food Solutions to offer value in that community, right? To give before they take, right? So let's give them more.
Which is
Let's do some competitions.
Which is very
Yeah.
much a Unilever way, isn't it? Give before you take. You think about the Dove campaigns, for example. So I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and this is where we saw magic. Really, we really saw magic. We saw lead generation really amplify, the cost per lead drop down. We saw, literally the kind of engagement we saw was unbelievable, because the community was so small. Certified chefs are not a lot, right? I mean, for you to be a certified chef, you go through a lot of pain to get there. So it's not a big community. It was around 120,000 people across all these markets that I told you, right? So, but when you speak their language, when you let chefs speak a language only chefs can understand, it's so relatable, it's going to inevitably create higher engagement, right? So one of the insights we received is that chefs behind the counter, they, I forgot the term that they use, but basically when they're basically within their environment, they're macho, they'll be like, my knife is stronger than yours. They'll use language that the brand can never use. And this is actually what we played on. We let them speak that language very comfortably, because they're people. They can say whatever they want, right?
It's almost creating aspiration for others, isn't it? To say, wow, I want to be like that, and because you're educating people at the same time, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's interesting. The insight we really started from was, and that's something that we like to tell all brands, is that from the dawn of Hollywood, from the dawn of the printing press, right? It was always advertisers pushing these personas and making them more popular. That was really the starting insight. There needs to be a role for Unilever Food Solutions to make these chefs more popular, because the more popular they make them, the more they're loyal to the brand.
Of course. Of course.
Fast forward 3 years later, these chefs would contact us and say, I get so many job opportunities. I'm so popular now among my community. My value increased so much. And that's all because of Unilever Food Solutions.
There you go. So you're actually helping them build their personal brand because of the way which you went about this, and you saw inspiring content, but it just wasn't getting the reach. So with your expertise, I think it's a great story, this. It really, really is. And it's understanding the value of niche communities, isn't it? It really, really is. So the results were quite amazing, weren't they, when you showed that? I was looking at the sort of the before leads generated were about sort of 11,000. And, tell us how that sort of exploded on the campaign.
So I'll get to some technical stuff, right? Back then, it wasn't so easy to connect the creator account and be able to promote their content. Platforms have evolved where they allow you, if you tag the brand, you can immediately boost that content. That wasn't there. So we had to work around the APIs and the connectivities to be able to connect these accounts and be able to manage their accounts as an advertiser. So we were acting as an advertiser on these accounts, promoting their posts towards these target audiences that we had very specifically wanted to target. And the fascinating thing is that we did not anticipate the organic growth to be so big. In fact, chefs were sharing those videos with other chefs, and they were doing the work for us to bring them towards the community. So the early on, the first insight is, whoa, we don't really need to grow the community with paid as much as organic. We'd rather utilize the paid to do a lot of retargeting.
Hmm.
So any chef that has viewed other chefs' content, you know, quite and had a high completion rate, so they viewed, for example, a minimum of 50% of their video, especially those branded videos that we've done with Unilever, this is when they get a message from the brand asking them to check out their products and fill a form for a salesperson to contact them.
Mm.
So we did it in the natural way, really, right? We had someone, influence somebody about a brand without asking them to go and fill a form, because it's not the job of the chef to tell them, go fill a form,
Cool.
at Unilever and have a salesperson talk to you.
Of
That's not
course.
their job.
Of course. Yeah.
The job is to really create the engagement and have and really position Unilever as the person who's coming to the community and providing value. So then when another chef was exposed to that ad, their response to that ad was much higher, because they looked at the brand favorably. Immediately, they no longer saw it as a way for them to be sold to. It was actually a way to have a conversation with that brand, which was cooler, which was closer to the chefs. And that's why we saw this explosion. 4 times, the size of the acquisitions. We had, 42,000 leads being generated
Incredible.
at 43%, at half the costs of the lead. And the reason why it's fascinating, if you really look at the cost to produce content and to pay these creators and use paid, you would assume that this is a very heavily costly operation. And it is. But, if I compare it to the traditional way of the brand, putting a lot of money behind this brand content, they were probably spending a lot more in media. So what we've done, we're saying spend less in media. We focus on that media budget to retarget only, and spend a bigger part of that media to create content and give value to the community.
Mm.
And that's how, we were able to reverse the numbers.
Yeah.
Right. And the insight is also one of the important insights as well, because the community is so small. The more paid media you do, the higher the frequency, the more people are going to be pissed off seeing ads from you. So the response rates are going to be, lower with time, and the market's going to saturate. What's interesting is that if you use 2 creators and you target the same audience with 2 creator messages, believe it or not, frequency plays a bigger role in getting them to convert. Because if I am hearing it from 2 people, even though I'm hearing it twice, but I'm hearing it from 2 separate people, I'm more likely to take action.
Of course you are, because it's third-party advocacy, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So brand pushing that message twice versus 2 people sending that message, we already see a massive impact from 2 people sending that message to a person seeing it and having it perform way better.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. Well, I'm really chuffed. So I guess, what was your biggest takeaway from this? Because, I mean, some of these things, when you create a great campaign, as I've often said to other people, you can almost blueprint it and say, look, well, could we take this concept, this format to other companies, maybe in different industries even, because it's clear the power of these niche communities can work really well. But, tell me more about what your biggest takeaway was.
The reason why I wanted to talk about this use case, even though it's quite 7 years old, is because it really opened up our eyes to the fact that social should be people-led. The party is on the people side, not on the brand side. The advertising model of platforms needs to adapt to this reality and needs to figure out a way to help advertisers connect with creators and then use paid media on these assets. So that was the first insight. This is the way forward. This really gave us the confidence, and the data had actually proven to us that this was the model, right? But 7 years ago, if you go to a brand and you talk about this case study, they'll be like, sounds complicated, sounds too much work. I'd rather just create a couple of assets from the brand and then push them in paid media. It's much easier. Today, that case study, I think, will resonate way more than 7 years back, because advertisers are closer to this reality today. And that's why we're seeing creator marketing grow so much.
Because we trust the opinions of others way more than we do just annoying ads that just aggravate and annoy us. We want to feel that everything is congruent in the storytelling, don't we?
But saying that 7 years ago was not something that a marketer can take, in an easy way, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're telling them you have no control. You're allowing people to speak on your behalf. You have no measurements because the platforms are not helping on those measurements side. So it was really foreign to them. But today they're really much closer to that reality because they're seeing it. Yeah, actually, I hate ads myself as a marketer. So obviously, I don't want to see ads. I want to see real people telling me real stories,
Quite, absolutely.
right?
Yeah, love it. Yeah, thank you, Abed. Really fascinating story, and what a great work you guys have done for Unilever. Just to finish, I'd like to get a couple of predictions on what's going to happen in the influencer marketing industry over the next sort of 12 months. I mean, things move so rapidly, don't they? What's your thoughts?
So for the next 12 months, one, more platforms are going to offer creator-led solutions. We're seeing Snapchat starting to offer this for, to put things in perspective. Snapchat is extremely relevant for us in our part of the world because it's the number one social platform in Saudi Arabia. It's really used
Is
the
it?
most.
Is it really?
Yeah.
What?
And believe it or not, they're innovating a lot of these solutions in our market because of that positioning that Saudi has in terms of how important it is for Snapchat. So we're seeing more and more platforms offer creator-led solutions. It's not a surprise to start seeing YouTube offer that also a lot more. Today, the creator economy or the creators' work on YouTube is very separate from the media work on YouTube, right? You buy ads, but you don't collaborate with creators on ads. And that's something that we're going to inevitably see change, right? So more platforms offering creator-led solutions, which is going to, drive our industry forward much faster. It's going to grow really the shares of spending being put on this basically channel. So that's the first thing I expect. The second thing, I'm not sure if it's going to be 12 months or 24 months. I'm not particularly great at determining time. I've started doing this about 12 years ago, thinking it was, the next big thing. It took a long time for this to happen, right? But one of the inevitable things I see is somehow creators and platforms clashing. Creators are going to demand more money because if you really look at the economics of social media, look at YouTube. YouTube, splits half their revenue with content creators. Half of it. That's equitable, right? It's 50-50. You put in the effort, you put in the content, we'll give you the bandwidth, we'll give you the audience, we'll split it 50-50.
Yeah.
Where is Meta from that? We're not seeing any sort of creator monetization happening. So I expect Meta to move towards that, to that world more and more. And as creators, and as the economy gets tougher, creators are going to demand more money, and they're going to demand it from the platforms. Is it going to happen in the next 12 months? Is it going to happen in the next 24 months? Not sure, but that's inevitably going to happen because the economics are not equal, and there needs to be more equity in that sector.
Yeah.
So that's something I also see. I also, expect more brands to move beyond the content co-creation into commerce co-creation, whereby, and I'm not talking about a brand going to a celebrity and creating a product with that celebrity. That's something that we've seen all the time, and that's probably going to continue. Some are going to be high risk and going to fail, and some are going to be very successful, normal. But what I'm talking about is a brand going to micro creators and giving them avenues to create their own products that are bundled and personalized to the creator. Think a beauty brand. What stops a beauty brand going to a beauty creator and telling her, pick one eyeliner, from our product
You can
range,
have your own
one
line.
mascara,
You can have your own product line.
or not even product line. It can be still, the same products, because manufacturing a whole product line for a micro influencer does not make sense from a supply chain perspective. It's too costly. But what they can do is they can personalize. So they can pick certain products, and, the brand can actually create a box that's personalized to the creator and say, this is, Marie's box powered by the brand. And all of a sudden, what happens in this scenario is that the creator is no longer selling someone else's product. They're selling their own product. And so authenticity becomes far more prevalent, far more, and the story becomes far more real. Right? And audiences are going to basically buy more because they're not buying a third-party product, they're buying the creator's product. Right? So I expect some brands to also play around that world to move from just content co-creation into product co-creation. And what this unlocks as well, less supervision from the brand, because the creator, again, is not talking about the product of the brand, they're talking about their own, so they can say whatever they want. You know what I mean? We don't need to get involved so much in the content anymore. So I see more brands also, trying to adopt this, and I see more the direct to consumer brands who are willing to basically test these things because they're more agile. They're willing to test these models rather, the more established brands. So these are some of the predictions that I anticipate that are going to happen in our industry in the next couple of years.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really fabulous.
My pleasure. Thank you, Gordon. Thank you for having me.